Bonneville Power Administration markets the power from 31 federal dams and 1 nuclear plant to utilities that serve the businesses and residents in the Northwest. And what you may not know is that in addition to that, one of the most important things we do is help fish like these get through Bonneville Dam, where I am today, into the streams and other tributaries of the Columbia River and the other rivers on which we have dams to make sure that they can spawn. We also take measures to help them so that they can get back through these dams effectively to get back to the ocean to grow. Come with me now. We're going to explore the fascinating cycle of life these fish go through and measures we take to ensure that these fish can continue to thrive in the Northwest. So to understand the balance between power production and BPA efforts to protect fish, it'd probably be a good idea to talk a little bit about the types of fish that inhabit the Columbia River Basin. I'm joined by Sarah Branham, a BPA Fish and Wildlife Project Manager. Sarah, can you tell us a little bit about what types of fish are here in the Columbia River?
Well, the Columbia River Basin has a lot of different salmon species, which include spring, summer, and fall Chinook, as well as coho and sockeye and steelhead. There's also bull trout and sturgeon, which are resident fish, which don't go out to the ocean and back. The salmon start their lives in freshwater streams, and then they go to the ocean and spend some time in saltwater before coming back to spawn in freshwater again.
And BPA goes to great efforts to protect both endangered species and other species that call the river home. Can you talk a little bit about those?
Yeah, the Endangered Species Act lists a number of different species in the Columbia River Basin as threatened or endangered, and some of them are just for particular areas. The run might be healthy in one area but not another.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the factors that may have contributed to getting to that point?
Well, as this area got more populated, we started logging and doing more agriculture and degrading the stream habitat that the fish are reared in and go back to spawn in. We also built dams that made that trip to and from the ocean more difficult.
So now that we know a little bit more about the fish that are in the Columbia River, we've come here to the Cascade Hatchery in Cascade Locks, Oregon, which is operated by the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. So what exactly is a fish hatchery and what kind of things go on here?
Well, they bring in adult fish and they take the eggs and the milk from the female and the males and they mix them together. They put them in trays where the eggs are reared until they get a little bit bigger and hatch open, and then they're put in ponds and gradually bigger and bigger ponds until they're old enough to release.
While hatcheries play a very important role in restoring fish runs, let's go see how fish reproduce naturally. So now here we are at a creek. This is where fish reproduce naturally. What are their needs back here? What kind of environment do they actually need to successfully do that?
Well, they need cool water and they need the right kind of gravels to make their redds where they lay the eggs.
So in addition to funding hatchery efforts, they also go to fairly great lengths and spend quite a bit of money to restore creeks like this one. Can you tell us a little bit about how BPA does that?
We work with federal agencies, states, tribes, local agencies, irrigation districts, conservation districts, all sorts of different people to do things like fencing the riparian areas to keep the cows out. We plant vegetation along the creek to shade it, to keep the water temperatures down. We screen irrigation diversions, and we do a lot of research and monitoring to help scientists make better decisions in the future.
So I think we got a really good idea of what we're doing to restore areas like this and fund certain hatcheries and other efforts to restore fish runs. Why are we doing that?
BPA markets the power from the federal dams, so we're the ones that have the financial obligation of mitigating the effects of those dams on the fish populations, and we take it very seriously.
So we've been to a hatchery, we've been to a stream where fish actually come back, find their way back to home and lay their eggs. We've covered that stage of the development of fish. Can you tell us a little bit about a fish's journey from that environment back into the river and ultimately the ocean?
Well, depending on the species, the fish will stay a few months up to more than a year in the tributary that they were born in, which is why habitat work in those areas is really important because they spend a lot of time there. But once they're ready, they'll start moving down to the main stem and then out to the ocean.
So obviously, as these small fish make their journey, the natural predators aren't the only challenge that they encounter. How do fish actually make it past the dam?
Well, going upstream, all the fish go through fish ladders, but downstream there's a number of different ways that they can make it through. They can go through the spillway gates behind us, and they just shoot right through the dam. Some fish go through the turbines, and all the main stem dams now have fish-friendly turbines in them, which are much less damaging to the fish. They generally don't touch the turbine blades or the wall as they go through. We also have on the main stem dams fish slides that take the water off the top of the pool behind the dam and shoot the fish right through.
Now, that's just a way of kind of helping the dam move them through. Are there other methods that are used to help them get from one point to the other on the river?
Well, we collect a lot of juveniles up along the Snake River and actually barge them past all 8 of the dams on the Snake and the main stem Columbia.
So now I'm actually standing with Sarah in Tanner Creek, which is a little bit downriver from Bonneville Dam, but this is exactly where the adult fish come back to spawn. And right now, there are literally fish to my left coming back into this tributary to lay eggs, do what they need to do to regenerate. How do they know to get back to a place like this, Sarah?
Yeah, it's all in their genetics. Somehow they can tell that this water is the same water that they were born in, and they know to take a right and come up this stream to spawn. Some of these fish will travel up to 900 miles to get to the original stream that they were born in and before they'll spawn.
Now, for some of these fish, this is the end of the road. This is the last thing they'll do. Tell us a little bit about that.
Some of the steelhead will actually return back to the ocean and do the whole process over again. But most of the salmon species, once they've spawned, they'll die, and their carcasses feed the insects that in turn feed the young salmon as they hatch and grow into smolts before they go to the ocean.
Sarah, thanks a lot for joining us to tell us about this cycle of life and the fascinating journey these salmon and other species of fish make. And I hope that you, the viewer, have a little bit better understanding how BPA does its best to harness the values of the Columbia River and the other bodies of water where there are dams, so that we can help these species that call these bodies of water home live the life they need to, reproduce, and continue to be an important cultural and economic resource for the Northwest.